Hi, Keisha.
Ah, 1 second.
No worries. You're not late.
I'm redoing my room, and so I look insane right now, but it's fine.
Insanity is welcomed here.
I got my bed up here, so I'm on the floor against my bed.
Well, I'm looking at Kelsey's credenza right now. Hi, Dana.
Hi.
I have to show you this obsession I have right now. You guys, I check it 7 times a day to see if it hasn't sold yet.
Is it on Pink Door Sunday?
No.
Oh, do you follow her?
I just started because my friend bought something from her.
She has this insane shell dresser, and she just keeps lowering the price on it, and I'm like, I should just buy it, but oh, is that vintage? What's her name?
21 vintage. Alexa?
Yeah, she like just picked that up. I guess there was a place in Lethbridge selling a bunch of their antique stuff.
Look at Keisha knows all the things.
It's true. Well, I just bought a house in May, so now I'm like, gotta
market
it up. So.
Oh, how's everybody doing this week? I'm just looking at Kelsey's face. That was just like that, hey?
You already know, so I don't need to talk about it.
And she has her pajamas on at 6:33, so
hey, it's 7:30.
Oh,
I'm on your time again now. Yep, I switched back. So confusing. But yeah, my kids are in bed and I'm ready for bed, but this will be helpful. So I'm like, okay, got my drink, cozy, I'm ready.
Right.
Going to bed right after this too.
Me too, you guys. I had a bad stint of just no sleeping and feeling terrible all the time, but the last few days I'm back and I'm like, oh, it was just that. It was just that.
I will be staying up till 1. It's fine.
Yeah. It was just that. It wasn't an inherent flaw to my passion for life. Just needed to sleep. Hi, Beck.
Our little girl has slept through the night 2 nights in a row, so fingers crossed.
Dreamy.
It had been like 12 weeks.
I can't. I just want you to know that I really did think that when I was just waking up so much in the night for no reason, then like I couldn't sleep during the day. I was like, so this is motherhood, hey? Sick. Great. This is how you people feel all the time. Awesome.
Yep.
Except it's worse because no one needs me during the day. Then I'm just living. And I don't have to keep anyone alive. So I don't know.
This is fair.
I don't know how they function, but they do.
Sometimes in my snarky moments, I just think, if God wanted me to have kids, that would have happened when I was 22, when I didn't know better. Now I just paid attention a long time, and I'm like, kind of looks like a scam, you guys, but
a little bit.
Yeah. I often wonder if I waited too long because I was 30, and it's like, I think I was like, should have been in my 20s when I was naive and didn't know any better.
Just do it.
See, where I feel like I was too young. I had my first one when I was 19, so, and then, a few more.
Yeah.
So.
You guys. Beck, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Beck, I wanted to ask you, are you a Tina's sister?
I am.
When we were on Zoom like a few weeks ago, you were just watching it, but I looked at you and I'm like, oh my gosh, that has to be a Tina sister.
That's funny. No one's ever said that me and Tina look like each other, but I think that's probably because nobody knows me and Tina both.
Right.
That's fair.
I feel like if you knew Tina and Liz, you could put that together pretty quickly.
Well, when I call Liz, I feel like I'm looking at myself sometimes.
Hi, Caitlin. How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, good. What are you working on right now in your life?
so many things. I joined almost way too many programs. So I'm balancing doing homework for all of the fun things I want to learn and do better, which has involved just a ton of manifestation and checking in with the feminine, which has been a really good, interesting challenge of like, do more or like do less, go with the flow, but also you're doing a lot. Like you've kind of entered this like do more, but do less to do more. I was like, I'm learning at a really rapid rate of how to do this. And then yesterday was the most winter day I've had in so long. It's like in the middle of a launch. So I came back from a busy weekend of just being gone. I was like, oh, it's my day to catch up. I'll do the things. And then the energy was just like I couldn't get myself up to a vibrational level to like show up. And then I just kind of sat with that all day where I was like, I should be there, but I can't be there. Like I want to be there. It's not serving anyone if I showed up like this. So I should really just sit. It was interesting.
I think one of the gifts like of the feminine is not always the doing less, though that's part of it. It's the like really honoring and sinking deeply into the energy, you know, so that when it's rest, it's like, because we half rest. Like I felt like I spent a week of my life half resting because I didn't give myself to like permission to go all the way. So I'm just like kind of working, kind of watching something because I should be whatever. And I just think that it's like, yeah, that's one of the big things is that we can actually do more when we cut out all the like middle mediocre, like shoulds, have tos, running on other people's agendas, whatever it is. I think that's what I think right now. Okay. I think Mackenzie said she has voice lessons. I think Crystal said she wasn't sure if she was joining us, so we can get started. Okay, wherever you're at, give yourself whatever movement you need, whatever stillness you need. There is no prescription in this moment besides traveling more deeply into yourself and daring to ask the questions and sit with the answers. So let yourself move as you settle into interior stillness, if that feels good. If anything arises that needs to be shaken out, stretched, let it move through you. And start to let your breath relax your low belly. Let it relax the neck. Drop the chin just slightly. Unclench the jaw. Just a little space between the back teeth. And really let yourself breathe right now, all the way down. And just imagine through your contact points with the earth, you start to grow roots. They are strong and powerful and ancient. They can break through whatever they encounter. And in the middle of all of them is one large tap root. One root designed to find groundwater, nourishment. And let that root sink even more deeply. Just let your mind wander across the question of what do you need right now? What are you looking for? What feeling are you seeking? Are you looking for peace or intuition? Deep knowing, groundedness, confidence. Just see what arises if you let that question settle into your being. And as this taproot reaches even deeper, just imagine it finding whatever you are looking for. Whether that looks like magma or groundwater, whatever texture of power or emotion or state you are looking for. Just imagine this root encountering that and pulling it up into your body. Imagine how all your senses would feel with more of this thing. How would this feel rippling through your body? You're just pulling more of this up into your pelvic bowl. Let your awareness settle into that pelvic bowl, into your sacral chakra, your seat of creation, your womb space, this energetic blueprint. And imagine this filling with swirling gold textured energy. And as it's filling, it starts to move around in spiral. It is pure light and awareness and energy and depth. It is more of that feeling, whatever you're seeking. You let it move faster and faster around in this pelvic bowl. You let it start to bring all your senses more online. More of you is awake, alive, at the ready. And with your next inhales, you start to pull that up more strongly through your body. And it is still moving swiftly, energizing everything that it touches. Inhale and pull that more up through your core. Exhale it, send it down into your root, into your legs. Inhale up into your heart space, your lungs. You are breathing with more fire and aliveness. Exhale it down further into your legs, your calves, your ankles. Inhale it up through your shoulders, up through your neck, into your head. And just play with this inhale and exhale and moving this energy that already belongs to you through your body. Imagine it lightening and loving whatever it touches. You are still tapped in. Your roots are still connected to more. So if you feel like you need more of this pure creation energy, you can breathe it up through your roots. And let it fill up your whole energetic body. Let it breathe out beyond the borders of your skin. Imagine all of those roots stretching through into other tree roots, to water, to moss, to ancient filament, to crystals, to rocks. You have access to all this magic. And here, whatever questions you came with today, just let yourself dance with them from this state. Trusting your knowing, your connection, your absolute vibrancy and radiance. Over your next few breaths, just seal in whatever magnitude of this energy that you would like to keep right now. It's okay to let it go if that's more comfortable. You can tap in and generate more at any moment. But just with a micro hold of the breath, seal that into your body, whatever you'd like to keep with you. When you're ready, you can start to let those roots get hazy and fall away. Bring your awareness back to your breath, just in observation, to your body in this moment, to the room you're in. And really slowly and gently give yourself time to return and meet us here in the circle whenever you're ready. Okay. So I wanted to start out a little bit with touching into the energy that we talked about this week. Of using like those joyful moments as fuel instead of trying to fuel ourselves with self-denial. Instead of cutting ourselves off from all of our senses, that we can drop in and use more of those moments and realize how connected they all are. That one kind of sensation, one kind of use of our creative energy reflects in all those different dimensions. And I think it can be a really embodied feeling to create, to move from that place. Like we kind of started out talking about today, is that some of like being with, tapping into, harnessing, utilizing our feminine is just changing the energetics that we call on to do things, to get the things done. And maybe even more than that sometimes is respecting the times where it's enough, like stepping out of the hamster wheel and moving with more intentionality, resting with more intentionality. So I would love to hear how things are going, whether that's topical to our work this week or it's something else entirely. I would love to hear how things are, what things are coming up, what questions, surprises, delights, challenges, whatever is happening. Even if it's just a recap of how this week's work went for you or last week's work.
I'll just go first because that's fine. I feel like I didn't get to a lot of this stuff this week, which I was kind of bummed about but I've just kind of been busy. But just today, so I started homeschooling my kids a few weeks ago, and I've been listening to this audiobook about it, and I just got thinking about can't remember what they're called, but like when a school has like kind of a motto or I feel like there's a different word for it. Anyways, and I was thinking about making one with my kids, and then also just started thinking about one for like myself, because I feel like I'm like, when people ask who I am, I'm like, I'm wife, mom, nurse, whatever. And I feel like those titles are all relation to other people, where they're not like who I am. And I feel like I don't know who that is. Because yeah, I got married at 18 and I had 3 kids by the time I was 22. And I feel like I kind of lost myself. And then I kind of thought I found myself, and then I lost it. And anyway, so I just feel like I have this strong desire to find like some sort of peace, but also I'm like lacking direction of like where I want my life to go or what it should look like. Like I think I've said this before, like I knew when I was 8 years old that I wanted to be a nurse. I've known that like my whole life. And then all this COVID stuff has like totally shaken like my love of healthcare. And like I still have such a strong desire to like care for people and help people, but I just know that that's not the way I'm going to do it anymore. So then now I just feel like I am so lost. And anyways, so yeah, I am hoping that I can get a few days away to myself where I can just kind of refocus. And yeah, so, and I feel like I am distracting myself by redoing things in my house. But I'm also kind of using this, like right now I'm redoing my bedroom, and like Mac, my husband, and I have just been kind of, I don't know, on edge lately. And I just kind of remembered how much more I feel love for people when I serve them. And I think I haven't done that a lot lately because I've felt resentful about things and like feeling like I'm not being served. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to serve you then. So part of this is just like he's gone for I think he's been gone for almost a full week. and he won't be back till Friday. So then I just decided I was gonna redo our bedroom and surprise him, and hopefully that'll help with that. So anyways, that's me.
Can I offer you some ideas?
Yes, please, always.
So the first one that I really want to throw out there is the one of like, so I do this all the time. Well, less now. I'd like to say I've like made some strides, but I do this all the time where I'm like, I used to know things and now I don't know things. And I used to be like whatever, and now I have ruined it all. Why can I just not? And that's not how it goes. We don't get like a straight shot. And when we talk about rhythms and cycles, it's that same thing. But there's a line from the song. It's all like, I think I played it during Reignition. It's called Lineage. And she says, like, as I dance on the spiral. And there's like this really, such like a feminine, like cyclical nature shape. If you think of like a fern all curled up, but it also is like the phrase of our life. Like we dance on the spiral of passing by moments where we know the things and the moments where we're in the void. And it's so panicky when we're like like I think about it, I was thinking the other day that sometimes we treat the winter, the void, because yes, we move through that on a monthly basis, but we also move through that like inner life, that we know all the things, and then all of a sudden we're like, what? And it's like if we've only lived in summer and then all of a sudden it's winter, like you'd be like, everything is ruined. Like there is ice falling from the sky. And sometimes our life feels so panicky because we're like, oh, I was doing so good. My garden was growing. I'm like, and now what? And I think there's ways that we can move through that, like with more awareness and gentleness. But I think the stance on the spiral is unavoidable. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts. I feel like I'm like, when I turned 37 this last year, was I moved from like mid 30s to late 30s, and it was like a big shifty birthday for me, which like I didn't love that much. But now I feel like when I'm like, well, I know some things now because I've got some age, like that happened the 37. But I think that's one of the biggest gifts, is that I don't panic in the void so much. And I had a beautiful example of this even the past 2 weeks, like where I was like, whew, we're in like blank slate territory. And it was so weird because I like care about everything. I care about everything. I have the biggest plans. That's just how I live. And I was like, it was like I was in the void, like winterscape. And I was like, okay. And sometimes it comes down to that trust, right? For me, that's an easy one, is I'm like, well, I care about a lot of things. I will care about something real soon. But sometimes when we're in unfamiliar points on the spiral, then it's harder. But especially if you're here and you're living a life of like awareness and intentionality, that missing piece sometimes just is the trust that when something starts to grow, you'll see it and you'll recognize it. And so the winter, the void isn't like a cause for panic, and it doesn't mean you are doing anything wrong. And I would say almost exclusively, not exclusively, like almost across the board, almost unanimously, the women that I work with around 30-ish, they're like, whoa, the void. Like that's when I hang out with people. And like I knew all the things and now I don't super know the things anymore. And so that means you're doing it right. Think if you were on this like same trajectory, same like cadence of seasons forever, but we internalize it. That's like we all do it, that we're like, I've taken a wrong turn. And you can try on the idea that like nothing is wrong, and this brief like settling is creating space. And so I think you have so many, I was starting to write notes because I was like, oh, I gotta talk about that. but I think you also have this exciting idea, like that you're like, I want a thing that's me. And you can also shape what grows out of this void by what you decide to focus on.
Mhm.
And I have had one of my main mentors over the last probably 5 years of my life. Her thing, I can tell you what it is immediately. I am a goddess here in human form. Caitlin knows her. It's Cassandra. Always, that's the thing she comes back to. I'm a goddess here in human form. Like, we get to shape how we move through the world by what we decide about ourselves, just as much like there is this journey of discovering and seeing what grows next. But there's also this idea that we get to collaborate and like co-create who we become next. And so mine lately is like, I am a divine creatrix, because I just think that word's really sexy, you know, like I can make whatever. I'm a divine creatrix. But also it comes back in those moments where we're like, what? And it helps us come back to our trust. And it doesn't have to be a role or a relationship or whatever it is. It can be like an element of your essence that you want to solidify. I love those ones that we can sort of touch sometimes, you know, they're not crazy. If I said something like, I don't know, what would be hard for me? If I was like, I'm rational in every moment, I'd be like, okay. But I love those ones that we're like, oh, I can feel that sometimes. And we can use that to like integrate into our bodies. Okay, the last one I wanted to talk about is one of my very favorite things, okay? And especially when we are in, I'm dancing with how to like really talk about like how much to actually talk about like classical tantra in here, because that is like one of in classical tantra, we use the dualities, like masculine and feminine, to get to a point where there are no dualities, but it actually is all the same. And for most women, we move through the feminine to integrate more into the masculine, so that we use all of our love and awareness and everything to come to a place where we are also like fierce and conscious and whatever. Anyhow, coming back to this essence, like the feminine principle within Tantra, is the idea that we are going to be heartbroken over and over and over. Okay, let me expand. Because if you are spending your life oriented toward love, and that is like the gift of the feminine, like you noticed if you're like really and you're connected to your heart, you notice like when someone, say your spouse or your partner or whatever, says something mean, you feel that like immediately. Whereas maybe if you're like in the grocery store, you're like, whatever, F you too, man, I don't know. But like when we are connected to our heart, then we feel everything. It's when our empathy is like entirely turned on. And so oftentimes we get to this place where we're like, that's too hard. Like, then we find like sadness and we build up resentment, because the thing is that it's always looking for more. Like, it never gets to this point where you have like this like deep, transcendent, always perfect relationship, if we're using your example, right? But on the other side, you're like, you don't want to turn that off and just be like
Stagnant.
yes, and like 4 out of 10 is fine, I guess, and I'm not disappointed.
Yeah.
So this path between the two is, I think, like the infinite, never satisfied, always path of the feminine. And it is to stay open and then to be able to hold your own heartbreak. So, and that doesn't mean we don't get to like rely on people or like tell them when we're hurt and like speak our truth or whatever. It is that we hold, more important than that, our own like integrity to the principles with which we want to live. So in your example, like I love that you were like, I feel better when I serve them. True. If we're looking at it from this framework, it's you feel better when you are true to yourself and you are loving in your relationship. Mm-hmm. And that can happen in like micro moments. And it doesn't always happen. Like, why I wanted to talk about that distinction too is because we like know this and we've been told this, and we like intuitively feel it. Like when we're doing nice things, we like are nicer to that person. But we can also choose to do it through our essence, like through the gift of our presence. Because have you ever just been like sitting beside someone and you are loving, like you just, and it might not even be this like really really outward expression. But I think it's very cool to look at it this way, because then we don't hold ourselves to the overfunctioning. Not that you redoing your bedroom is overfunctioning, because it seems like you're real excited about it and you got a lot of vintage finds lined up. Okay, it's not what I mean. And also that's creative and beautiful. But we can stay open. We can stay in love without always having to do. That makes sense?
Mhm.
So next week, especially because I know we're doing alchemy this time, we're going to talk about how we can take all those like little heartbreaks and turn them into love. But honestly, I feel like if you're like Caitlin and you just want to run 5,000 miles a month or whatever, it's like you never get to the end of that track. You can always run more, I think. I don't know. But this is also like the path that we never get to the end of. And it's like, how can we stay open? So how can we like invite love, be in more love, be love itself without like that contraction, that clenching into resentment? Because we all want to do it, you know, we do for sure. And I feel like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, when I first heard this, I felt like I knew what that was in my body. I felt like when we're staying open, you can be sad or be disappointed and still be open, or we can like contract, clench, like collapse into the moment. And so sometimes I think, especially in those relationships where we're all like, you know, those ones that you can't just be like, well, I just won't call them for 3 months and it'll go away. Those ones we get to practice the most deeply of, in this moment, how can I remain in integrity to how I want to be in the world, which is like loving and open, but also like loving toward myself. Loving doesn't mean sacrificing our own hearts. But it means looking at like, what does love ask me in this moment? And sometimes it's like to be forgiving, that we're like, I'm still gonna paint the wall on your side of the room, even though I don't like whatever it is. Or sometimes it can be like, ouch, like that hurt, and we can be hurt in that moment instead of like going to our own room to be sad about it because we don't want to show that we're like affected. Like both of those things are us being in love. So spoiler alert, that's what we're working on next week. But I just thought it was so beautiful how many of those like really deep core entry points you brought up this week, that there is beauty in the space. And if you are showing up for yourself every day, giving yourself the actual space, like that container in the space, then you can trust that there will be sprouts and you'll see them. You won't just stomp all over them. You know, if you're looking at the ground really carefully, like, oh, they're back. Okay. And secondly, that you get to shape. There's nothing wrong. You haven't lost anything. There is just transformation, and you get to be a participant in creating what that looks like. Anything else, Keisha? Anything coming out of that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, and what else is going on? Did anybody try the meditation from this week? Or anybody do more swamping? I've been swamping every day. Let me tell you about my swamping the last couple of days, you guys. I literally I have my AirPods on and I start it when I'm coming back from my walk. So I'm like walk dancing for a while. And then I get back to my like my winter like Wicked Witch little grove of dead trees. And oh, it's from last week. Okay, I'll talk about it, Keisha. I just have to finish casting this vision of me. And the other day I started a fire, but it was too hard. I didn't do it today. So I just have my AirPods in and I just dance like a crazy person in my own little forest. So I hope someday you get to see that. It's really something. Swamp Weekends from last week, so that you are choosing music to move to, like we could say dance loosely, but it's really just like intuitive movement. So we're moving rage and then grief and then like cultivating, bringing up joy. So our practice this week, there was a guided meditation and it was kind of on that last piece. So it'd be really, I mean, you don't have to do, maybe you don't have 2 hours to do all the morning things that you want to. So you don't have to like do your swamping and then do the thing. You can interchange them or whatever. But anybody have any more experience with practices this week? Or anything else we want to talk about? Like I said last week, we can go. It's fine. My feelings will not be hurt. But if there's anything that's coming up, it's on your heart, even if you're like, that doesn't relate, we have space and time and energy for it.
I could share something. I'm trying to figure out where this fits. I feel like I need to re-listen to this week's video. For some reason, it was like more complicated to me this week.
Could be on me.
I don't know why. And I haven't done the meditation yet. But, and I guess I just want to maybe comment a little bit on what you said about Keisha too. When you talked about heartbreaks can turn into love and don't clench into resentment. And maybe I feel like for me anyways, in my experience, and maybe it's because I need to practice this, but this is like sort of a longer process for me, and like the spiral, like it's repetitive. And sometimes I have to go through the resentment, and like kind of heal through, like I have to feel that and work through it and kind of dispel it before I can move into the heartbreak, which can then be the love. Does that make sense? Like I can't just be like, I'm not going to feel resentment. No, I actually have to like work through that resentment and then kind of let it come out of me.
Yes. Sorry, keep going.
And the other thing was, trying to read back through my notes and I lost my other journal, but kind of this just like finding your own. And you said like you don't sacrifice, like loving doesn't mean sacrificing your own self. And I feel like I have grown up with a model where sacrifice is like the end all of everything. Even to where you almost like sacrifice who you are in the service of others. And you know, as a mom with 6 kids all going different directions, I'm just like in the thick of like sacrificing everything. And just speak of the devil. She's really not a devil. She's not a devil, she's an angel, but sometimes. So for example, last night, Mark got tickets to the Jazz game from one of his partners. And
and I couldn't decide if I was going to go with him or let one of the kids go because my oldest daughter needed to go to soccer, and I was the only one that could take care because he was going to the Jazz game. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll just let you take Sam. And he just said this in passing. He was like, man, the things that you sacrifice for your daughter are insane. Like, it was insane to him that I would actually sacrifice. Mom. What? Will you take her out and shut the door, please? No, I'm just a minute. Anyways, and that just caught me off guard because I was like, I do sacrifice everything. And I sort of had the thought that I needed to model for her what it looked like to like do something for myself. I don't know that that was ever modeled for me. Sorry, you can like hear the screaming.
This is just such a good case study.
Anyways, long story short, I went to the Jazz game. It was great. I don't love NBA as much as my husband does, but it was still fun to spend time with him. And I just didn't allow myself to feel guilty because I've had this change of thought that I need to actually model what it looks like to not sacrifice my entire self, so that when she's a mom or doing anything in her life, she will understand that she has to do fun things for herself too. Anyways, that was just something that I kind of got out of this, of like loving yourself, taking time for yourself, which is not something I'm super good at. Something that I can practice.
I want to talk about like first thing first about the like moving through the stuff. Yes, for sure. I think like sometimes the extensive moving through it is practice so that we can get faster. So I think sometimes in those like smaller moments where we just want to be like say things under our breath, then we have this like embodied memory of how we can stay open. But for a lot of those big hurts, of course, yes, that's like a big process to like let that crack open and feel all the grief and like actually move that. In no way do I mean that of like toxic, like positivity of like, okay, then you just get over it and let it go. It also is like, I think in its like briefest form, it's that we allow ourselves to move through like the depths and back out faster. But I think in lots of those big things, for sure, that those might be like a dedicated practice of like, ooh, I had this whole argument, let's say, like that's like a bigger thing than just an offhanded comment. And that might be a thing. Or it might be like a deep betrayal of a friendship. And that might be stretched over like months, years, whatever it is. But I think for me, it is very helpful, tragic, and important that I remember like, oh, it will never be enough. Like my soul will always be looking for like deeper, bigger, more consistent love expressions and connections in every moment.
I think that came up for me in the meditation. Like my soul is always looking, like it's okay for me to want more. It's okay to want. I can want things, and that's okay.
And I really believe that like a lot of that desire is like direction. It's divine and it's direction. Like that's where we see our next steps. That's where we see the next iterations of our life. It's like, what do you actually want? And I think to protect ourselves against that collapse and disappointment is to remember that there will always be a next thing. Like there will always be coming back around on that dance on the spiral. There will always be like, you will never, and can you imagine like your intimate relationship that it was just like perfection bliss forevermore? Like there will always be moments where you're like, oof, we're like, what do you mean by that? And it doesn't mean those have to be tragedies, but I think for me it's helpful to remember that I can sit with that. I can like be disappointed in someone and still be moving in the service of more love. Or like with your kids, you know, you're never just going to be like, you guys are super mean to each other, but it's okay. And so, but that also cushions us from the idea that like, I told you guys yesterday, no one ever listens, this is terrible, right? Is that you will always be oriented to there being better, more. And I love the idea, like, I think sacrifice is a tricky term, because you cannot be a mom and like, I make no secret that I have no firsthand experience of this, but we were talking about how I've watched this whole thing for the last decades with more scrutiny than I used to. And you can't do whatever you want all the time and like be a good mom like that. Sorry, I don't know. You can't. Like if you were looking out for yourself all the time, none of you would be mothering how in a way that you felt good about. If you were just like, oh, a boy was super mean to you at school. Tough luck, honey. I gotta take a bath. Like, that's not who you are. And that's not what I'm advocating for. But I think when we reorientate a little bit toward like, this is the expression I want to be of love in the world and for my children, then I use we in like loose sense, then we get to monitor like the levels of how that love lives inside of us. Then we're like monitoring our own depletion a little more instead of like glorifying in that depletion itself. And so a lot of moms I've worked with, I have said like, I will never advocate for you saying that you are more important than your children. Like that's just not how that whole like biological thing works. But sometimes you get to say like, and a lot of women are sacrificing for their husbands too. Like maybe you have 5 people in your house, and sometimes it's just a matter of the idea that like I am just as important as these other 5 people, and it doesn't have to be more important. But I think in terms of stewardship as well, like this is the person that you are granted the most responsibility for. And so the disappearance of that person is not necessarily like the game. And I think that's like tying it back to our work from this week, and probably Beck, there was a lot, I was like, it's probably not a very, very stellar linear layout, because I was like, oh, I want to talk about the Shakti and all the things, because we don't have this like really good term in our Western culture for like our life force and how that is the same as our love force. It's the same as our creativity force. Like all these threads of the feminine is like how we move through life in our fullest expression. And so if you think about how you mother when you were like resourced, probably, and that's not feasible for that to happen all the time. Like Dana said last week, well, like, I don't know if that's like my period or just that my kid hasn't slept in 7 days. I don't know. Like, it's just not, it's not possible for you to just be like glowing, bursting with life all the time and to take care of humans. But to see the value in that glowing and bursting with life is that you have more of your own like essence, not even in the doing, not even in the sacrificing. There is more of you to like shelter and tend the people that you have charge over, that you love. I don't know if that was even helpful or if you were even looking for helpful, but those are my thoughts about moms in sacrifice, and maybe some ideas into a real hard job.
It was great. I missed the last 2 minutes because my phone rang and then my earbuds went crazy, and I'm like, I can't hear what she's saying.
It's something about like, then you
But
have
that's
more of
life.
your essence to shelter and tend to the people in your domain without necessarily the doing and the sacrificing, without the over functioning. That we can be expressions of love in a different way just by like who we are and how we are like expressing ourselves in the world.
And I feel like I have been more conscious
Mhm.
of that, or I'm trying to be, to just be okay with filling up throughout the day or throughout the week, when and where, trying to do the morning practice, but just being really flexible about what that looks like
Mhm.
throughout the whole day,
Mhm.
and just being okay with it.
Totally. And that was a big component of this week too, is that like, I will believe till the end of time that like our morning practice, whatever that looks like for you, if it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, is like imperative to have that space where it's just us, like just us and our soul and our connection to divine. Like, I haven't found a real good way around it. Okay. But secondly, is that when we look at the path of most women as this householder's path, then it's like you're taking in those moments more fully. Like lots of times by our lack of presence, you might like have one of your kids come and give you a hug and you're like, oh, I gotta get this done. Oh, supper's late, was like whatever that is. Sometimes we miss filling up by those moments because we're like in the next thing, or like, oh, I should have done this and like I should do this. And so part of this soul essence path is taking those components of your life and really letting them in fully when they light us up. So that might be like, you know, when you have one of those really good snowfalls, it's like pretty for a second before it's all like Chinooky and terrible, that you like are taking that in with all of your senses and like finding like, oh, I am alive in this beautiful world. Or you like really crush it at something that you're working on for work, and you like really allow yourself to like feel that through your body instead of like, okay, the next thing I'm doing is, and that with that intentionality, we are replenishing that resource, that like reservoir, all the time, instead of just in our morning practice, that it also becomes our life. So that if you like, say you notice it's a day where you like really like your partner, maybe not all the days, and they just like have their hand on your shoulder and you like really take that in as like fuel and nourishment, that we just have these small moments of like the fullness of our humanity. Maybe you make like food. I made this salad the other day and it like filled up my freaking life force, you guys. Like pomegranates and apples and like bacon, and we like, instead of like, oh, I got to do this thing, we allow those to fill up this pot, which is full of the same thing. And so whether we are lacking like creativity or enthusiasm, or we feel like we don't have as much love to give people or whatever it is, when we focus on filling up one of those things, we fill up all of it. They're all like intricately, intimately connected. Anything else from this week that we want to chat about? Okay. Well, thank you for giving me the gift of being with you. It makes me go through these, focus on these currents, these elements myself. And that has been a gift. I've just been swamping like crazy the last few days and it's felt great. So Thank you for being here, for sharing with each other, with me. And next week we will be talking about alchemy. I talked a lot about it today, but it's alchemy of taking something that is maybe not that valuable and turning it into something precious. So whatever we are taking in from our life, how we use that in the service of more love. Okay, let me know how it goes, especially you guys whose lives we talked about most today. I'd love to know as you experiment with that this week, how it goes. Keisha, you can tell us your mantra that you come to for yourself. I am a fierce goddess who finds vintage furniture like a boss. Whatever that is. Okay, bye everyone. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.